Emma's hand lingered on the door handle, the cold metal grounding her in a world that suddenly felt unstable. Outside, the quiet street lay in shadow, bathed only by the faint glow of street lamps, the occasional flicker of a porch light, and the soft hum of distant traffic. Inside the truck, however, time had slowed to a crawl. Every heartbeat, every inhale, every glance felt magnified, charged with unspoken words and emotions too fragile to voice. Ryan's green eyes were locked on hers, unwavering, sincere, and impossibly intense. There was no hesitation now, no youthful awkwardness. He was a man, fully present, entirely aware of the space between them and the emotions simmering beneath the surface. "I shouldn't feel this way," Ryan whispered, his voice low, almost breaking. "But I can't help it. Every time I see you, every time I hear your laugh, every time. Everything you're in my thoughts. Always." Emma's chest tightened painfully. The words she had feared and secretly longed for were finally spoken aloud. Her mind raced with logic. He was her neighbor's son, younger than her, someone she had known in passing all her life. But her heart refused to listen to reason. I never knew," she admitted softly, her voice trembling. "I mean, I've noticed things too. About you. About how considerate you are. And tonight, sitting here with you, She stopped, overwhelmed by the depth of her own confession. Ryan reached out, his hand hovering just above hers on the seat, hesitant as if fearing to cross a boundary. "Emma, it's okay. You don't have to say anything more. I just needed you to know." The quiet warmth of his presence pressed against her like the coziest blanket. And for the first time in years, Emma felt seen, understood, and noticed in ways she hadn't even realized she'd been longing for. The truck was parked in the gentle shadows of the street, the engine ticking softly as it cooled. For a long moment, neither of them moved, simply sharing the silence that had become almost sacred. The world outside existed, but it felt distant, unimportant compared to the fragile bubble that surrounded them. Emma's heart pounded as she grappled with the intensity of the moment. She wanted to pull back, to regain control, to step out of the truck and retreat to safety. And yet another part of her part that had grown tired of hiding, tired of being overlooked, tired of living a life measured only by rules and responsibilities, ached to stay. "Ryan," she whispered, her fingers brushing lightly against his. The contact was tentative, electric, a spark igniting between them. I don't know what this is, but I feel it too." Ryan's lips curved into the faintest smile, relief and joy mingling in his expression. "Then we feel the same," he said simply, his voice steady but gentle. "And that changes everything, doesn't it?" Emma nodded, the lump in her throat making it hard to speak. Yes, it did. Everything had shifted in this quiet moment. The way he looked at her, the way he listened, the way he cared, it had all become something she couldn't ignore, something that would linger in her thoughts long after this night ended. She realized then that this wasn't about age, about propriety, about convenience. It was about connection, unexpected, intense, undeniable. The kind of connection that rewrites everything quietly, yet irrevocably. Ryan's hand finally settled over hers, warm, reassuring. The simple touch sent a ripple through her entire body, a wordless promise, a delicate acknowledgement of shared feelings. Neither spoke for a long while, content in the understanding that had passed silently between them. Emma finally exhaled, a soft, shaky breath, and leaned back slightly in her seat. She looked at him fully now, memorizing the curve of his jaw, the depth in his green eyes, the slight tension in his posture that spoke of emotions he had held in check for too long. She felt a tender ache in her chest, a mixture of longing, fear, and exhilaration. "I don't know what will happen next," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I know. This moment, it matters. More than I can explain." Ryan squeezed her hand gently. "Then we'll figure it out," he said. "Step by step. No rush. No expectations. Just us, starting here." Emma's lips curved into a faint, grateful smile. It was a smile full of relief, wonder, and something dangerously close to hope. The fear had not vanished. Of course it lingered, subtle but present. But the possibility of something real, something shared, something that could grow, outweighed the hesitation. For a long while, they simply sat there, hands intertwined, hearts beating in quiet harmony. The world outside moved on, cars passed by. Distant voices murmured, and the wind rustled through the trees, but the truck had become a sanctuary, a vessel of unspoken promises and burgeoning emotions. Eventually, Emma realized she had to leave. The apartment was waiting, and the night was not theirs to command. She gently withdrew her hand, heart aching, and opened the door. The cool night air kissed her cheeks, stark contrast to the warmth that lingered inside the truck. Ryan's voice stopped her before she could step down. "Emma." She looked back, meeting his gaze, and the world fell silent again. "Thank you," he said simply, "for letting me ride with you, for letting me." For this moment, Emma felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, not sadness, not regret, but a quiet, profound gratitude. "Thank you too, Ryan," she whispered, "for noticing me, for everything tonight." For this, they shared a long look, one that carried more than words ever could. And in that gaze, they both understood something essential. Life would not be the same again. Something new had begun, fragile, tentative, yet undeniable. Emma climbed the steps to her apartment, pausing at the door to glance back. Ryan was still in the truck, waiting, watching, just as he had been throughout the ride. The street was quiet, the rain had stopped, and the night seemed impossibly vast and full of possibilities. She opened her door, turned the lock, and leaned against it for a moment. Heart still racing, mind still swirling. The ride had ended, but the change it had sparked was only beginning. Ryan's voice, still soft, carried to her ears as if on the wind. "Tomorrow," he called quietly, almost shyly. "Tomorrow, we can talk again." Emma's lips curved into a smile. "Yes," she whispered. "Tomorrow." And as she stepped inside, closing the door behind her, Emma realized she had crossed an invisible line, not with a kiss, not with a declaration, but with the quiet, undeniable acknowledgement that something had begun between them, something that would grow, that would challenge them. It's what awakened parts of their hearts they hadn't known existed. One, its quiet ride with her neighbor's son had changed everything, and neither of them would ever be the same. Ryan's voice cut through her thoughts once more, quiet but certain. "You deserve more than staying late at work every night." Emma turned, startled by the firmness in his tone. "What do you mean?" His jaw flexed, and for a moment he didn't answer. Then he said, "You give so much to everyone else, but who gives back to you?" The question hit her harder than she expected. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, realizing she had no answer. The truth was, she hadn't thought about it in a long time. She had grown used to being strong, independent, reliable. But in Ryan's words, she heard something she hadn't felt in years, someone genuinely worrying about her. Her chest tightened painfully, and she looked away, blinking back the sting in her eyes. She couldn't let him see that his words had touched a part of her she usually kept hidden, but she didn't need to answer. The silence that followed was enough. Ryan seemed to sense her emotions, his expression softening as his fingers tapped lightly on the wheel. He didn't press her further, didn't demand more than she could give. Instead, he let the quiet wrap around them again, patient and unhurried. Emma sat there, torn between comfort and unease. She had never imagined a simple ride could feel so complicated. She wanted to believe it was harmless, just conversation, but deep down, she knew better. His words had shifted something, unsettled something she thought was steady. And as the truck carried them closer to their street, Emma couldn't shake the thought that Ryan wasn't just giving her a ride. He was offering her something else, something she wasn't ready to name. The city lights faded behind them, replaced by the quiet of suburban streets. The hum of the engine was the only sound now, but Emma no longer heard it. All she could hear was Ryan's voice echoing in her mind. "I always have." Her pulse quickened, her breath shallow. She told herself she shouldn't think too much of it, that it was just neighborly concern, nothing more. But the truth was undeniable. Something between them had shifted tonight. And Emma wasn't sure she had the strength to ignore it. The ride home felt shorter than Emma wanted it to. The truck rolled through the quiet, tree-lined streets of their neighborhood, headlights sweeping across familiar porches and driveways. Normally, this last stretch of road brought her relief, the comfort of returning to her own space. But tonight, it stirred something else entirely: disappointment. She didn't want it to end. The closer they drew to home, the more Emma realized how much she had enjoyed the closeness, the charged silences, and the quiet revelations Ryan had shared. Something about the night, about him, had unsettled her in ways she didn't dare admit out loud. When Ryan finally slowed the truck and turned onto their street, Emma's chest tightened. He pulled up neatly along the curb, right in front of the building where they both lived. The engine hummed softly, then fell silent as he shifted the gear into park. For a moment, neither of them moved. Emma's hand rested on her bag, ready to reach for the handle, but she didn't. Her body froze, as though waiting for something she couldn't name. The air inside the truck felt heavy, dense with all the words they hadn't said. She forced herself to breathe, to act normal, to break the spell. But before she could speak, Ryan's voice cut through the stillness. "Emma," he said her name quietly, as though testing how it felt on his tongue. She turned to him slowly, her heart stuttering in her chest. His expression was serious now, his green eyes locked on hers. There was no casual smile, no playful ease-only intensity. Raw and unguarded. He leaned slightly closer, his voice low, hesitant but steady. "Do you ever feel like some moments change everything, even if nothing's happened yet?" Emma's breath caught. The question lingered in the air, fragile and dangerous. She stared at him, trying to process his words. Did he mean this moment? Did he feel the same pull she had been battling since she stepped into his truck? Her lips parted, but no sound came. Her throat was too tight, her heart beating too loudly in her ears. Ryan's gaze didn't waver. He looked at her like he was searching for something: permission, understanding, maybe even courage. The silence stretched, every second amplifying the tension that hung between them. Emma finally found her voice, though it trembled. "Ryan, this is..." Dangerous to say. He didn't flinch. "I know." The honesty in his tone made her pulse race. There was no denial, no attempt to soften it. He was confessing even without the full words. And she, against all logic, wasn't pulling away. Emma turned her face toward the window, desperate for composure. She stared at the familiar street lamps, the neat lawns, the quiet homes lined in a row. Everything looked the same, yet nothing felt the same. The safety of her world, her boundaries, her sense of what was right, all of it felt fragile now, as though a single wrong word could shatter it completely. "You're my neighbor's son," she whispered. The words more to herself than to him. You've grown up, and I didn't even notice until tonight." And now she stopped, unable to continue. Her hands trembled in her lap. Ryan didn't look away. His jaw tightened, his breath heavy. "I can't pretend anymore," he admitted softly. "I've felt this for a while. I wasn't sure if I should say it. But being here with you, I can't keep it in." Emma's heart twisted painfully. Hearing him put words to what she had only just begun to feel was both terrifying and intoxicating. She wanted to stop him, to protect them both from crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed. And yet another part of her, the part that had grown tired of being unseen, untouched, unconsidered, act to lean in closer, to let herself feel. Her fingers brushed the cold metal of the door handle, her only escape. If she opened it now, she could step out, end this before it grew into something impossible. But her body resisted. Her hand lingered there, trembling but unmoving. She turned back toward him, and in that instant, their eyes locked again. It was all there, the vulnerability in his gaze, the unspoken confession, the deep longing she hadn't dared to name. Her lips parted, but she couldn't speak. She could only feel the weight of the moment, the intensity of his presence, the frightening awareness that she was standing at the edge of something irreversible. Ryan leaned ever so slightly closer. Not enough to break the fragile boundary between them, but enough for her to feel his warmth. His voice dropped low and pleading. "Don't go yet." The words froze her completely. They were simple, quiet, but they carried a force that broke through every wall she had tried to hold up. Emma's breath hitched. Her chest ached with the conflict inside, her reason against desire, safety against longing. She should leave. She should open the door, thank him for the ride, and walk away. That was the sensible thing. It's the right thing. But she didn't move. Her heart had other plans. For the first time in years, she felt truly seen, not as a colleague, not as a neighbor, not as just another person passing through life. Ryan saw her, remembered her, noticed her in ways no one else had. And in his quiet plea, she heard something she had been craving without even realizing it. Someone asking her to stay. The truck was silent except for the sound of their breaths, uneven and heavy. Emma sat there, torn between two paths, one that would preserve the life she knew, and one that could change everything. The street outside was calm, indifferent to the storm brewing inside the truck. A porch light flickered across the road. A dog barked faintly in the distance. Ordinary sounds of an ordinary night. But for Emma, nothing about this night felt ordinary anymore. She met Ryan's eyes again, her own filled with conflict, fear, and something dangerously close to longing. She whispered his name, barely audible. Ryan. Her voice cracked on the syllable, betraying her struggle. And in that single moment, suspended between silence and confession, Emma realized there was no going back. The question wasn't whether something had changed. It already had. The question was whether she would dare to step into a tour, run from it before it was too late. Emma never thought a simple ride home could carry so much weight. But that evening, everything felt different, strangely alive, quietly unsettling, as though the world had slowed down just for her to notice. The day had been long and tiring. Emma worked as an assistant manager at a publishing house in downtown Seattle. She loved books, words, and stories, but the endless paperwork, meetings, and late hours often left her drained. That Friday, as the autumn sun dipped behind the tall buildings, she sighed with relief when she finally closed her office door. She longed for warmth, quiet, and maybe a cup of tea at home, but her car had other plans. That morning, it had refused to start, dead battery perhaps, or something worse. She had left it at a small repair shop near the office, promising herself she'd deal with it tomorrow. Which meant tonight she faced a long, crowded bus ride back to her neighborhood. The thought of waiting in the cold drizzle, pressed shoulder to shoulder with strangers, weighed on her. She hugged her coat tighter as she stepped out onto the quiet street, and then she saw him, Ryan. The black pickup truck slowed as it neared the curb. The window rolled down, and there he was, her neighbor's son. His face was illuminated by the dim glow of the dashboard, and for a brief moment, she almost didn't recognize him. He had changed. Emma had known Ryan since he was a teenager. Awkward and lanky, always with a baseball cap pulled low over his forehead. He used to mow his parents' lawn during summer breaks, wave shyly whenever he saw her carrying groceries, and occasionally help her carry heavy bags upstairs without being asked. He was a kind kid, quiet, dependable. But the young man sitting in the truck tonight was different. Broad shoulders filled his jacket. His jawline was sharp. His dark hair fell loosely over his forehead. His eyes, green, steady, curious, met hers with a maturity she hadn't seen before. Need a lift? His voice was calm, deep, more confident than she remembered. Emma froze for half a second. Something inside her twisted unexpectedly, an unease mixed with warmth. She shouldn't hesitate, which is Ryan, her neighbor's son. Yet accepting a ride from him suddenly felt intimate, personal. Still, practicality won. She smiled faintly and nodded. That would be wonderful. Thank you. My car's out of commission. He leaned over to unlock the passenger door. Emma opened it carefully, sliding into the truck. The faint scent of leather and cedar greeted her, along with a trace of something distinctly him-clean warm, familiar in a way she couldn't explain. She adjusted her coat as he pulled smoothly back into traffic. At first, silence filled the truck, broken only by the hum of the engine and the soft patter of rain on the windshield. Emma tried to focus on the city lights flickering outside the glow of storefronts, the blur of headlights passing in the opposite lane. But her chest felt tight, as though something invisible pressed against her ribs. She glanced at Ryan out of the corner of her eye. His hands rested firmly on the steering wheel, veins lightly visible, his posture relaxed yet attentive. He wasn't the boy she remembered. He wasn't even the young man next door anymore. There was something steadier, more grounded in the way he carried himself now, and for reasons she couldn't name. That unsettled her. To distract herself, she spoke. "So, how have you been? I don't think I've seen you much lately." Ryan glanced at her quickly, then back to the road. "I've been good. Busy with work. I'm at the mechanic shop downtown now, full-time." Emma smiled softly. "That suits you. You were always good with your hands." The words slipped out before she could stop them, and immediately her cheeks warmed. She hoped he wouldn't notice, but Ryan's lips curved in a small smile. "I guess so. It feels good, though. Fixing things. Making them work again." His voice carried a quiet pride, the kind that came from someone who knew his path. Emma nodded, looking back out the window, though her mind wasn't on the streets anymore. She couldn't remember the last time she had spoken to him for more than a passing hello. It felt strange, this sudden closeness in such a small space. And yet, beneath the strangeness, there was something else too, something she didn't want to admit. The rain grew heavier, streaking the glass with silver lines. Inside the truck, the air seemed to grow warmer, almost too warm. Emma folded her hands in her lap, her fingers restless. Why did she feel so aware of every small detail, the rhythm of his breathing, the way his thumb tapped lightly on the steering wheel, the deep quietness of his presence? She shook her head slightly. This was just a ride home, nothing more. But deep down she knew something was shifting, even if she didn't understand it yet. Her thoughts wandered to the years that had passed so quickly, to how Ryan had grown up right under her eyes, to the fact that she had barely noticed until this very moment. And that realization unsettled her even more. As the truck turned onto the freeway, the city lights stretched behind them. The silence returned, but it was no longer empty. It was charged, humming with something unspoken. Emma could feel it, like a spark lingering in the air. She wondered if Ryan felt it too. The question pressed against her chest, heavy and insistent. She wanted to look at him, to read his expression, to know if he was thinking the same thing she was afraid to admit. But she didn't dare. Instead, she sat quietly, staring at the raindrops racing each other down the glass, her heart beating far too fast for a simple ride home. And in that moment, Emma realized this night was already different. She couldn't explain why, but she knew something had begun. Something she wasn't ready for. Something she couldn't quite name. The truck carried them forward into the rain-soaked night. And Emma silently wondered if she was moving toward something she would never be able to turn back from. The hum of the truck filled the silence like a low, steady heartbeat. Outside, the freeway stretched long and dark, dotted by the occasional streak of headlights rushing past. Inside, the cab was warm and quiet. Yet every second felt heavier than the last dot. Emma kept her gaze fixed on the glass, watching the rain blur the glowing city lights. She told herself she was just tired, that the strange flutter in her chest was nothing more than a result of the long work week. But the truth was harder to silence. Sitting beside Ryan, she felt a pulse, subtle, steady, and confusing. It was Ryan who finally broke the silence. His voice was low, almost hesitant, as if he'd been debating whether to speak. "You always work late, don't you?" Emma turned slightly, surprised that he'd noticed. His eyes remained on the road, but there was curiosity in his tone, a quiet insistence that made her pulse quicken. "I guess I do," she replied softly. "The job demands it. There's always one more thing to finish, one more file to check." She forced a light laugh. "I'm used to being the last one out." Ryan nodded, his profile calm under the dim glow of the dashboard lights. For a while he said nothing, just let her words hang in the air. Then, after a pause, he added, "I notice things. More than people think I do." Emma tilted her head slightly, intrigued. "Like what?" He glanced at her quickly, a flicker of something unreadable in his green eyes, before he looked back to the road. "Like how you always leave your apartment early in the mornings, coffee in hand. Or how you water your balcony plants every Sunday, never Saturday, never Monday. Always Sunday. Or the way you stop and talk to Mrs. Collins when she's out with her dog. Even when you're rushing." Emma blinked, caught off guard. His words weren't casual observations. They were detailed, thoughtful. He had been watching her, not in a strange or unwelcome way, but with a quiet attentiveness she hadn't expected. She shifted in her seat, her throat suddenly dry. "I didn't know you paid attention. I always have." The simple honesty of his reply unsettled her more than anything. He wasn't joking, wasn't teasing, he meant it. And in that moment, Emma realized that Ryan didn't just see her as the neighbor who lived across the hall. He saw her, really saw her, in a way she hadn't felt in years. The silence that followed was different now. It wasn't empty. It wasn't awkward. It was thick, charged, alive with something unspoken. Emma's heart raced, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of her coat. She didn't know what to say, didn't know how to handle the weight of his attention, to ground herself. She asked the first thing that came to mind. "You've grown up, Ryan." Her voice came out softer than intended, tinged with something she couldn't disguise. "You're not the boy who used to mow lawns anymore." He gave a small laugh, though it wasn't lighthearted. "No, I guess I'm not." Emma risked another glance at him. His jaw tightened slightly, as though holding back words he wanted to say, but wasn't sure he should. His hands rested firm on the wheel, and there was a steadiness in him that startled her. He wasn't the uncertain teenager she remembered. He was a man now. And the realization sent a shiver through her. She quickly turned back to the window, her thoughts unraveling. Why did she feel this way? Why did his words, his attention matter so much? It wasn't supposed to. He was her neighbor's son, younger, too close to home. And yet, something in her longed for the way he noticed. The way he spoke like she mattered. The rain outside seemed to echo her restless heart, tapping against the glass in an uneven rhythm. She wanted to ask him more, how long he had been paying attention, what else he had noticed, why he was telling her now. But fear held her back. Fear of opening a door she couldn't close.